And the first day I was in business, I looked at my checking account. I had $57, literally. My refrigerator was leaking all over the floor. I had to buy a new refrigerator, and that night my cat died. So I had a vet bill for $800 and no kitty. So it was an unceremonious start. But I went from that project, that $200 a month billing, that was August. So from August to December, we billed $90,000. That was pretty incredible. The next year, 376.
Today's guest is Randi Brill, a creative force with a passion for helping entrepreneurs bring their ideas to life. She's the founder of Just Call Randi, a design agency focused on supporting advisors, collaborators, and entrepreneurs. Randi has a unique ability to spot what isn't working and turn it into something bold, clear, and effective. Through her work, she's helped growth-minded leaders stand out, communicate their message, and attract the right partners. Whether it's tackling a big start-from-scratch project or solving design challenges quickly, Randi has built a reputation for delivering creative solutions that make a real difference. I think you're going to find something that will help your business as a result of this podcast. Well, my guest today is Randi Brill. She's a friend of mine. We've had the opportunity to meet on a couple Zoom calls and in person, and she's an amazing person. So I'm really grateful to share her story. Randi, welcome to the podcast.
Well, thank you very much, Matt. I'm so happy to be here with you today.
You have quite an amazing story. Let's back up to the early days. How did you become an entrepreneur, or what were you doing before that?
Teething. I have always been entrepreneurial, and I didn't know it. I didn't know the name. I would never have told you that. I was one of those I'll do it kids. It's really funny. I had really bad ears as a child. I probably couldn't hear a lot. So I colored. So I was sort of in my own little universe, and I just created things, and I didn't know not to. And, there's a story. I wrote a book about it called Let Me Entretain You, which is my tales, my comic and poignant tales of being an entrepreneur, because it's not all fun. And it's got its challenges. But when I was 3 and I was in nursery school and I was absent a lot because I was sick, that we were doing these little lanterns for Mother's Day. You fold the paper, you cut it. And I got bored waiting, and I started cutting mine. And I looked around, and mine didn't work like everybody else's did. And then Miss Florence came over to the table and she says, "Nancy, look what she did." And I went, "It's over. My life is." I made fringe because I cut the wrong side of the lantern. So I not only fixed it and made it, but I added value. I was 3. And then that year at Mother's Day, you think I was the only one with a fringed lantern? I started a trend. They all fringed their lanterns. But it's been since the very beginning. I didn't know any different. I worked, part of it is I had to. My family would have given anything to any of us. They didn't have it. So you got a job. You got your job for your summer vacation was a $13 bus pass. And that really, you went to the museum. You went to the library. And that it was an amazing education. And so I've always been very entrepreneurial. I do think it's in the DNA of many people, and some people have the opportunity or they meet someone who helps ignite that and they can act on it. Other people, I think, swallow it and never get brave enough to try. But it comes out, Matt. It comes out somewhere. It can come out on icing amazing holiday cookies. If that's inside you, it finds a way out, like water finds a way out.
So was there somebody who inspired you or helped you develop your entrepreneur?
I was, in a very early stage, a rule follower. I was never the child who got in trouble. But
wait, you were a rule follower?
In school. I followed school rules. Oh, yes. Randi Brill marched in line. And part of that was because you didn't want to stand out. And I mean, there was the popular crowd, and then there was me. And I was in fourth grade, and they had a competition for littering, littering competition. And you had to draw a picture, and everyone did it in art class. And they said, oh, you could write a poem if you want to. You could write. And I wrote a poem with mine, and I painted my picture, and they were all lined up all across the auditorium. And then they said, the winner of all of this is Randi Brill. And I was shaking and my knees were knocking, and I walked up there, and the principal said, oh, no, dear, we're looking for a boy.
Oh, no.
And I stood there and I didn't leave. Now, how that happened, and then I heard this voice say, well, I'm not a boy. My name is Randi Brill. And she was getting very agitated. And finally, my teacher came up and said, no, this is Randi Brill. And I was like, who said that? That was one of the first times I found my entrepreneurial voice. I remember it vividly, because I think you have entrepreneurial strengths and you have an entrepreneurial voice. I mean, there are times I'll hear someone saying something and I'll say, my goodness, oh, that was me. Well, it's true. It's true, because if you're that in tuned to leading, because entrepreneurship is leadership, but it's leadership in an unencumbered way. And that people say, oh, I want to be free. I want to set my own hours. I want to run my own life. Guess what? Then you should have a 9-to-5 job somewhere where at 5:01 you can run your own life. Because if you are going to be an entrepreneur, you're going to eat it, you're going to sleep it. And the other problem is you're going to love it. And when you love it, you live it. And it's tough sometimes when people sign on to that,
It's so true. It feels like a roller coaster sometimes. It's up, it's down, it's sideways. It's, as Michael Gerber says, you get grabbed by the entrepreneurial seizure that I can do this better than my boss can. And then there is a large amount of dopamine that comes with it. And so
that's
that can
the
be
key
a
to
problem.
not having a boss. But when you're an entrepreneur, for me, I don't have a boss in my office, but I have hundreds of bosses, because everyone I work for, I must report to, or I can't support them. We can't deliver what we do without honoring and respecting the companies we work for. I mean, think about it. I know brand design. I know it cold, but I don't know your business. I never will know your business like you. And in order to add value to you in that business, I have to ask questions. I have to listen. And that's where the rule following comes in. I mean, there's a place for all of those pieces of us as entrepreneurs, I think.
So the business that you're in right now, was this your first business?
No, I've had many. Some people call people serial entrepreneurs. I was rather a simultaneous entrepreneur. I did quite a few things. I started my first company in my basement. And I started on a day when I didn't mean to, because I was bored at this job that I had. I was in publishing. I was a publishing designer, and they weren't giving me anything to do. Very dangerous, very, very dangerous. And I went to my boss and I said, I can't keep doing this. I need a project. What do you got? Either that or I'm going to paint the walls. And he was like, sorry, kiddo, we don't have anything else. We're not going to have another big publication for 18 months. Well, you might as well have sentenced me to bread and water. So I said, well, I'll tell you what, I know I'm going on vacation next week, and that's why I had my big 5 days. And I said, I'm going to think about what I'm going to do. Will you please spend the same time thinking about and finding me a project? I really want to stay. I really want to be part of this, but I got to have something to do. Go away. And while I was away that week, I was like, I better be prepared. What am I going to do if he says there's nothing? And I'd been tinkering. I had a little red notebook and I would write down my ideas and I would say, well, if I were in charge, I would do this. And if I had my own company, I would do this. And it became more real and more real and more real. And I went in that Monday, but I really didn't think he was going to not have anything. And so he said, how was your vacation? I said, it was great. I said, how was your week? Did you find me a project? He goes, nope, nothing's changed. So I said, well, then I'm afraid I need to give my notice. I'm going to start my own business. And so he said, well, good for you. I said, I decided if you, as one publishing company, don't have enough work for me, then maybe I should do, instead of trying to do big work for one company, I should do a little bit of work for many. So I'm going to start my own business. So he goes, I think that's great. You can work through the 14th. Everything's wonderful. This was at 8:40 in the morning. I resigned again at 9:30. I resigned again at 11:15. I resigned again at 1 o'clock, and they kept moving me up the food chain. And at 2:30, I was in the president's office, and he offered me my boss's job. And it was for 4 times the amount of money I was making, a car, stock options, a secretary, anything you could imagine. And I said, well, I need to think about this. Absolutely, you think about it. And off I go. We had a store called Marshall Fields in Chicago, and I needed an umbrella and I needed a pair of shoes. I could not keep taping the bottom of my shoes. And I decided to go in and trap myself that either way, whether I took this job or I opened my business, I was going to have the umbrella and the shoes so that even that money wouldn't influence me. So that night, my mother calls me. She goes, so did you resign? I said, I resigned at 8:40, at 9:10, at 10:30, 11:30, and then they offered me his job. And she said, oh my goodness, Randi, it's amazing. Your father doesn't earn that. She said, I don't know very many people your age who would get such an opportunity, and I know only one fool who turned it down. And I said, Ma, I had to. They did not get up that morning thinking they were going to make me the vice president of design. They responded to a situation, and they responded so rapidly. How will I trust them to stay on point going forward? They didn't get up saying, boy, we need Randi. They were trying to fix something broken. And so she said, what are you going to do? I said, I'm going to go in and I'm going to tell them. And the next morning I went in and they were so sure I was going to say yes. And I said, you did it. You founded this publishing company. I've got to do this. I know you understand. And I left there with a job for $200. And the first day I was in business, I looked at my checking account. I had $57, literally. My refrigerator was leaking all over the floor. I had to buy a new refrigerator, and that night my cat died. So I had a vet bill for $800 and no kitty. So it was a ceremonious start. But I went from that project, that $200 a month billing, and the first, that was August. So from August to December, we billed $90,000. That was pretty incredible. The next year, 376. And I remember saying, I needed an accountant and an attorney. And I said, I am going to have she was I said, I'm running a business. And she said, well, that's really nice. Go to Walgreens, get yourself one of those little notebooks where you put the receipts in. And I said, you guys aren't getting this. This company, I'm going to buy a house by the time I'm 28. And this company is going to bill $1 million by the time I am 30. And they never missed a beat. And she said, well, then perhaps get a larger notebook. And it was true, but it didn't work out that way. I didn't buy the house at 28 because I made the $1 million at 28. And I was so busy, I didn't buy the house till I was 30.
That's amazing.
Well, then it kept going bigger and bigger. And here's the challenge. I had ended up building a company that was as big as those other companies. I had a 7-story building. I had 120 people. We were working in educational publishing, where that meant if you, Matt, as a publisher, came to us and you said, "There's a Randy, we want you to do reading, kindergarten, grades 1, grade 2, we're going into Texas, we're ready to go." You sign a big contract, you hire your people, because there are only so many people who can do kindergarten pre-reading. You know, these days they're reading encyclopedias and Harry Potter, I'm sure, in kindergarten, but it was very imperative that you had the subject matter expertise. And then Texas would do something and say they're not funding, and then the publisher would scramble and they'd want to honor the contract, and they'd say, "What else do we have?" And they'd say, "We can give you high school calculus." Well, that's wonderful, but I don't know anyone who's an expert in pre-K reading who's going to be able to master high school calculus. So forever the scrambles. I was running after my business, not running it. I loved my work, my creative work. I did not love my job. I did not love fighting for 20 cents on the dollar to proofread something. It became very commoditized.
So
And it was
let me
hard.
back up just a second. So how did you take it from 0 to a million a month being, or a
No,
million,
a million a year. Don't rush me.
million.
That would have been lovely, but no, that didn't happen. It was one project at a time. I had 7 people in my basement. We moved very organically, very methodically. I didn't know it at the time. You just did. The day I signed a lease on 13,000 square feet, I lost my first job for $1 million. At 1 o'clock, they canceled the program. I had no work to fill it because everybody worked very far in advance in that industry. And here I was driving over to sign a lease. And you would think, "Oh my gosh, don't sign the lease." But I did, because they were very separate issues. The lease was how my company was going to grow. The project we lost could not be replaced without having that. So you take massive risks. It didn't occur to me that I would not be able to solve whatever came my way. Now, some of it I messed up royally, but those are the things you learn from. That's Dan Sullivan from Strategic Coach says that's your tuition. You either are earning or learning. And that's how it happened, very gradually. We went from the basement to basically a strip mall. Then from a strip mall, we went to this big fancy office building in the suburb. Then I bought a building in the city and renovated it. Then we outgrew that and we rented space next door. And I never had a key. I got locked out more than anybody. And that explains so much. But the reality was, we ended up buying a property, tearing it down, and building a 7-story building. And when you grow and I guess I would say, sometimes in your 40s and 50s, 40s probably is the invincible decade. If you've had success early, you tend to think you always will. There's an invincible, at least in my case, decade where you just think, "I've done it before, I'll do it again." Did you ever read Atlas Shrugged?
Yes.
Okay.
Love it.
You're talking to Dagny Taggart. I was that stubborn. I was the one who was sure I could fix it. And I stayed too long at the fair. I should have backed up earlier and said, "You know what? I'm not loving this." You don't unwind 120 people kindly, nor do you unwind a 7-story building and publishers that you've been loyal to, who've been loyal to you. You don't do that overnight. I mean, when you've got projects that are 10, 12 months long and they take 6, 8 months to sell, you have to decide early when your stopping point is. If you want to take care of these people. Now, do I work with them now? No. Do I respect them? 100%. I just don't work that model anymore. That's why today I work only for ACEs. ACEs, advisors, collaborators, entrepreneurs. You got to sit in the big chair. You got to be willing to make the decisions, and you got to be willing to show up to impart your brand design. And that's why I'll tell you that in a second. I don't work for people who don't write the check. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So I want to circle back. So you're going along, things are going pretty well. You've got a 7-story building. What happened that the bottom fell out, or
No, the bottom didn't fall.
what
I fell
happened?
it. I fell
You
it. I was like,
how?
it's not fun. It's not working. It's not going to keep growing. So it took me 10 years. I mean, it took a long time to build it up, and it took me 10 years to strategically evaluate. We don't need a production department right now. And how do you take care of those people? And how do you package those people? And how do you thank those people who were so ridiculously loyal? Look, we were a service business. We were the squeeze play. It had to get to Texas by here. The publisher had delays up front getting their approvals. We got what was left. And that meant a lot of pizza for a lot of people, and a lot of people who didn't get home for dinner. So it was imperative to me to end it right. So I did it slowly, and I did it very gradually.
So your business model wasn't working, and you started basically saying, when this project's done, we're not going to take on another one like that?
Um, I'd love to tell you it was that calculated. It wasn't. It was somewhat opportunistic, reading the tea leaves. And I went from this big company, we called it Khorasan. And I'm the raw in Khorasan. Company still exists. But I condensed it and rebranded it. Of course, we rebrand all the time, to Quora Core, our core services. That's how I cut out the first layer. Then I moved down and I went to more of a consultative model where we didn't just work in education. We worked in education, entrepreneurship, nonprofits, corporate. So we were able to go back to our roots of a little bit for many. And it was through that discovery process that I realized the people I belong with are my people. I need to be with people who are entrepreneurial. We think differently. We decide differently. We risk differently. We envision differently. And these people are people for whom I can add enormous value. And that's what floats my boat.
So you were with these great big companies before,
Yes.
where it was kind of B2B, but
It was very much B2B, but the little Q was kind of squished in the middle of the B and the B because you were a vendor.
yeah.
And they had so much pressure on them, pressures I couldn't alleviate. And it got to the point where I was running after my business instead of running it. And once I recognized that, I got calm. I knew what was most important to me was to do it right. And what was most important to me was to treat the people that sign, when you're an entrepreneur, people tie their wagon to your star. That's a responsibility. That's a burden. That's an honor. When you do it well, it's an honor. But for some newer entrepreneurs, they get surprised by it. They think they have to wear their boss shoes. No, you have to be a partner. You have to treat your team as well, if not better, than how you treat any of your clients and prospects. At least that's what works for me. If I can't help you and figure out how to add value to you, it doesn't give me my starter fluid. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, real quick, we're building a community of entrepreneurs helping entrepreneurs. These are people just like you who want to start or grow their businesses and are ready to take the next step. If that sounds like something you want to be a part of, sign up and join us today. How did you've done 3 books, is that right? The Brillogy?
Well, I've done 4 books, but I've done the
4 books.
Brillogy. I have them here for you. I knew you'd ask. The first book is called 56 Word Secrets. And this is what makes entrepreneurs tick. Entrepreneurs struggle with people thinking like them. So what I did was I took 6 words and I designed them. I'll send you a copy of it. And those words tell people why entrepreneurs are the way they are, which is turn the fear into fuel, for example. That would be one. And 6 words people can remember, 6 words. Then on the back of that page, it would say, Here's why this matters to entrepreneurs. Here's how you as a team can incorporate it. And then there's a little space to write. And we made posters out of them. And that was book one, because that is one of the most important things for entrepreneurs is how do you take care of your teams? The next book I called Let Me Entretain You. Yes, that's me, Matt. And this is just one entrepreneur's comical, poignant, and yet very short tales to inspire yours. People come to me and say, oh, I want to write my book. Well, that's great. What do you want to say? They're not sure. So I thought, how can I say to people, write your book if I'm not willing to put my stories out? Remember when I said to you, oh, here, this is the one. You'll like this because this is what we just talked about, which is my little scissors. Hang on. This was my fringe, the story I told you about the fringe. And it's all very highly designed. This is Randi in all her glory over the years. My daughter's tucked in there. And what I did was put myself out there. I told my stories, you know, when you're scared, when you're alone, when you sit in the big chair and nobody else is around. How do you motivate yourself? How do you come out from under the desk?
Let's unpack that one a little bit, because there's a lot of entrepreneurs out there who may be struggling with that, especially if it's the first time that they've encountered something that's scary or too big for themselves. How did you get through it?
Waterproof mascara. No, I mean that seriously. People have a vision of themselves. Now, I'll tell you my vision of myself, and then you'll laugh, and then you'll say, aha. Because my vision when I was young was I would be thin, I would have big hair, I would have long nails, and I would be very confident. That was my image. Now, I wasn't any of those things. Seems like some of it's procurable. But the key is when you hit those walls, where do you go? I mean, people joke about The Godfather. Good movie if you're an entrepreneur. I always think about go to the mattresses. And I think about it because that's what I do. I get stressed and I grab one of my Randi notebooks. Sorry, it's upside down. I grab one of my notebooks. Nobody else goes in these. I scribble. I ask myself questions. I do rainbow graphics. I do what I need to do to sort. Entrepreneurs are out there. And if you're a value-adding entrepreneur, you're focused on everybody around you. And you're moving and you're processing and you're grabbing everything. And you are, at least in my case, making connections. Ooh, maybe they need that. And you're listening and you're trying to hear where they are. But then when you need that time, not to be in your business or for your clients, but how do you take care of you and your company? Of course it's scary. You think I wasn't a train wreck the day I picked up that pen and signed that lease for 6 years on 13,000 square feet? And I'm like, well, goodness knows, I hope they don't run to the bank with that check. Because, I mean, I had to mortgage my house. But even in those times, the question I think you ask yourself is, does it occur to you that you don't want to do this? Does it occur to you, oh, I won't be able to figure this out? You don't have to do it alone. You don't have to be you can be part of a mastermind. It's wonderful to have other people because it is so much easier to solve somebody else's problem than your own. You can tell me every single thing that's going wrong and the brand doctor can be in and I can diagnose what you need and we can all feel wonderful. I'll write you a prescription. You'll be on your way. And then I can cry in the car. No, I mean, I say this honestly.
No, you're right.
Because I think entrepreneurs think they're the only ones who feel this way and every other entrepreneur has it together. I always said, and this is not about being an entrepreneur, but I didn't marry young. I was very busy in my business and I didn't meet my husband right away. But I used to say that what people do is they always wanted to go out on Saturday night and they'd get all dressed up and they'd go out and they'd be very busy holding their stomach in so that they could meet someone that they could stay home with on a Saturday night in a bathrobe, not holding their stomach in anymore. I mean, think about it. But
Yeah,
we have
absolutely.
this persona, this perspective of what we think. I'll never forget the day my parents came to the big office. And my mother walks in and she looks around. And my brother was working with me at the time. And she said, Mary, can she really afford this? And, she was a child of the Depression. She grew up where you saved $12 in case you needed three. And then you spent one because you might not have 12 anymore. So that gets very ingrained. How your family handled money is a very big influencer to where your entrepreneurial fear versus fuel, I think, comes into play. But we are so sure everyone else is confident. I mean, you and I go to some masterminds and we walk into that room, and there are some people in that room that I know want to be under the table. I know they're having a hard time, but they have built themselves up, and I don't know who they're pretending for. But you want to know something? In an environment like that, they do get real because it's safe. So what I would say to entrepreneurs is you don't have to do it alone, and you don't even have to join something that you might think is very expensive. Buy yourself a book. Get on that treadmill, listen to an audiobook. Hear something that makes sense to you. Oh, I could try that. Read autobiographies.
What are some of the most influential books you've read that would help an
Atlas
entrepreneur?
Shrugged was one.
Absolutely.
Because it didn't occur to me till I finished it that I, had on the bracelet and should have left. But, there's a little John Galt in all of us. And that's been a big one. Collins Good to Great was wonderful. I read all of Dan Sullivan's books, all of them. 2x to 10, 10x is easier than 2x is a very profound book for me. And I think listening, I'm a big audiobook person. And the reason is that I can multitask. I can get out for my walk. I can listen. And I don't get out as much as I wish I did lately, but it's on my list. And one of the things that I think climbs people out is looking at what you have gotten done. Look at how many things on that list you can click done, done, done. I've always done this. I replay the day at night. When it finally gets quiet and I sit down and I go, oh, wow, I wonder what happened with that. I never heard about it. And that'll go on my list. I will recapture all the stragglers, but less so now. My team we're very collaborative. We work so, I can open up my Google sheet and say, they did do that. That is done. Oh, wait, I forgot about this. And then I can let it go. But I really think, taking a little time every day to work on your business. Somebody gave me this suggestion, pick 3 things a day. I think it was Dan Sullivan, actually. And he said, I never do more than 3 things a day. Now, I don't have the team Dan has, but my 3 things can be take amazing care of my clients, take amazing care of my team, and make sure I'm pushing the company forward. And if those are my 3 filters, honestly, Matt, anything that comes across my universe, including something like this podcast. I mean, this podcast inspires my team. They feel really proud. It might inspire a client, that's fine. But if it helps somebody who's on the fence about, do I jump in this pool? Well, first of all, you're going to get wet. Now, you can jump in the pool with flippers and floaties. Won't look so good, but you might feel safer. You can also step in the pool and go down 2 or 3 steps. There are lots of ways to be an entrepreneur or to be entrepreneurial in your life. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to give up everything that makes you feel safe. Don't you agree?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's a spectrum. And it starts with 2 Post-its, a paperclip, and $57 for some people.
If somebody's sitting out there and they're in a job that maybe they hate and they've kind of had this itch that needs to be scratched for the longest time, where would you tell them to start?
Get a notebook. And I know that sounds silly. I would work, I would honor my job, and I would be there every day, just like I was trying to figure out, give me something to do. But build your business before you have your business. Visualize it. One of the things we do a lot of is what we call Mission Possible projects. And we do this for a lot of very established people. Maybe they've sold a business for umpteen gajillion dollars, and now they're not sure what to do. And then a couple of really powerful guys and women say, you know what, let's do this. And we're going to change the world with that. And they don't know what the this is. And we come in. Do you remember Mission Impossible? Not the one with Tom Cruise, my dear Tom, right. But where they would go in and they would set up an office for a sting, and they would put all the equipment, and Greg Morris would be there, and they would all be doing this, and the Mark would come in and they would take care of it, and everything would be great. And then she'd come back the next day with the police and say, it was all here. And there'd only be phone cords on the floor, ripped out. It was an illusion. But we do what we call Mission Possible businesses. We'll build them a website, we'll brand it, we'll give them materials, a one-pager, a trifold, a presentation, if they want to raise money. Doing all of that helps them visualize it. That's brand design. Right there is taking something that doesn't have a visual persona and giving it one. And then, people say, oh, I'm going to start my business. No, I don't have anything, or I should start it at night. Pretend, pilot it before it costs you anything. Yes, you have to invest to create those materials. But the idea of, and we've actually talked about this together, the idea of bringing to life and giving it visual form is incredibly powerful for entrepreneurs. Because it's real. It makes it real. And it makes it real in a way that gives you a partner. Because brand design and all those tools can pave the way for you. When you give someone a business card and it has a website on it, the website and the business card better match.
Yeah.
So I would say do that, before you say, okay, I don't advise having $57 in a broken refrigerator as the model for anyone to follow. But seizing the opportunity in a measured way is really, it won't hurt anything, providing you show up for work. And if you're an entrepreneur, you've got plenty of energy to do your day job. Think about this at night. And when you're ready, I would invest in a Missions Possible kind of package, because it's a really good starter plan.
I like that. I don't remember who it was who said everything is born twice, first in your mind and then in reality. And I think Dan Sullivan has a line that says, see it in your mind, see it in your hands. Same kind of concept.
Well, they also have a concept that's really fabulous, which is make it up,
make it real,
and make it reoccur. And the thing to think about is brand design and Missions Possible. You make it up, we make it real. And all of those branded assets help you make it reoccur. Because they're doing some of the heavy lifting for you.
I like that.
Yeah. So.
Where do most entrepreneurs get this wrong? You've worked with thousands of people over the years. Where do most entrepreneurs get branding wrong?
I think they take what I would call the three most dangerous words in the word brand, and that's the word and. They get anxious, and it's the spaghetti on the wall thing. I mean, I have wealth advisors, and they really want to focus on retirement, and they want to focus on financial planning. But then they get nervous and they say, oh, we should tell people we do Roths. We should do 529s. We should do this. And. Clear, concise, cohesive, consistent, pick and stick. You can always add. And the other thing I say to people, and I include myself in this, Matt, because I get it wrong still, which is just because you can doesn't mean you should. And I I stand back a lot and I say, what's going to happen if I do this? What's going to happen if I don't? And you know, the only other thing I say is entrepreneurs get very tripped up with everything is terrible. Until everything's been terrible on 12 Thursdays, you're not going to know that you'll be fine on Friday. Okay. I had this theory once. I wasn't going to worry about anything if it was under $300. And that was when the business was growing. And I had this $300 rule. And if it was under $300, you could do it. And then one day I realized 19 of them did something. It was a lot of hundreds. And I went, okay, bad plan, try again. But the reality is everything you think is important isn't. Being able to discriminate about what really matters. People will say to me, oh, this is terrible. This is just, everything's ruined. A, learn something from it. And B, unless it's a cupcake and you've ruined the icing, it still tastes good. But the key is, if this is really going to go the distance, then what's going on here isn't going to matter because you're going to figure it out. And the flip side is also true. If this isn't going to go the distance, then what's happening here right now isn't going to matter. You know, it's taken the big, long view. And I think entrepreneurs have trouble sometimes seeing the long view.
Yeah.
You know?
I like your point about choose a few things. As paramedics and EMTs, our students have to get on a call and figure out what's important and what's not. And they're very, very good about it, doing it instantly. Airway, breathing, and circulation. We're not best in the world at toe fungus, but if there's a problem with an airway, a breathing problem, or circulation, we're pretty darn good at it. This is our bread and butter, right? And I think most entrepreneurs it would serve them well if they would do that same thing, to say, this is my lane. I'm going to stay in it. I'm not going to go and do everything. And instead of chasing everything, you attract the right people. And it becomes
a hard lesson for people to learn. And that's very true, Matt. I think that when you're in a life and death situation, as you guys are, it's easy to pick the big three. You're not going to die of toe fungus today. But so the prioritization is kind of defined for you in an entrepreneurial setting. I mean, did you ever walk into a place where they're supposed to sell candy? And you go in and there's candy everywhere, but they also have potato chips. And then over here, they have a little soda container over here. And then at the counter, they sell jewelry. And then they have magazines in the back. And then they sell sweatshirts. You know, I mean, it's sort of like, if you ask me for it, I'm going to figure out how to find it. And sometimes I think people, as entrepreneurs, what we do is we say yes, then we run home and we make it true. You know, I mean, that's just what we do. That said, it's got to be within your lane. And it's really easy to think, oh, if I do all this, I'll really grow. But if you do all this, you really won't know. You won't have gone deep enough to learn what does and doesn't work in those lanes, to be that expert. You know, people aren't looking for someone. If you're looking for a doctor, you're not looking for a guy who's done back surgery 3-4 times because he's a generalist. No. You want somebody who only does backs, period. Same, I can't imagine a business where that's not true, where there's not some layer and panel of expertise that you should stick to. That's why we call it brand design. That is it. I just got off a call with someone and we were talking, but she goes, I just need to know what you would do for my clients, whatever. And I said, well, if you need this, we'll do this part. If you need this, that's not us. Mm-hmm. So, okay, I get it. I understand. And some people would say, whatever you need, we'll take care of it. It better be something we do really well. I don't practice on my clients. No entrepreneur should. You know.
It's great. I love that.
That's just me.
As we start to wrap up, what one tip could you give the listeners that they could implement in the next week that would really help them with branding, that they could maybe do it themselves until they can call Randi?
Well, I always say, don't try this at home. But no, and it's true.
Right.
What I would say is, get your story straight. Okay? Understand, tell your story. The first thing I'm going to ask, or any brand design agency is going to say to you, is tell me who you are, tell me why you're doing this, and tell me what's going to set you apart from the rest of the world. You know, in EOS, they'd call it a vision statement. I mean, there are all kinds of terms for this, but get your story straight. Because one of the things I say is brand design done well is very authentic. Brand design done poorly is decorating. And you'd be decorating, you know, oh, I have this really fun name for my company. Okay, what's your company do? I don't know that yet, but I like the name. The other thing I would say to people is if you are going to get a name, please get the domain. And the other thing I would do is if you're creating content that you think is unique and special, and Matt, you can totally share that link I gave you with any of them.
Okay.
By all means, get an account on Instant IP. You don't necessarily need to invest in trademarks and copyrights or patents today, but protect your intellectual property and start with that as a habit now. And, you know, you can go to our website and you see a category called Instant IP. And you can click on it and there's a link and it explains our process to help people. People go IP and they don't know what to do. So we have this we call it O3 IP, which is we help you outline, organize, and optimize what you're going to do with Instant IP. Because people do get stuck, but I would say that's a really powerful habit that could give new entrepreneurs an edge. Because those of us who've been doing this for a while, we didn't have this option. So we have to double back and do our work on this. But if you are starting, build yourself a good story, write it down, learn why, you know, Deirdre Van Nest calls it your why story. It is. Tell people why you're doing this, why they should work with you, and most of all, why you can help them and why you want to help them. It better not be about you. It better be all about the person sitting across from you. And that, if you can add value to them, focus on that. Focus on protecting your unique ideas so that you feel safe enough to share them in the world. You know, new entrepreneurs tend to say, oh, I don't want to tell anyone my cool idea because people will steal it. So protect it for $97 and then tell the world. And then it becomes yours.
Just to add to that Instant IP. So if you've never heard of it, it's a website and part of it's blockchain.
It's blockchain, yes.
If you have a book title or something that you're going to create, and like Randi said, you don't want to spend the money right away for a trademark or patent or whatever. You can say on this date and this time, I thought of this idea, and then that helps you later on. For $97, I've talked to authors who said, oh, I'm going to use this nearly every day because I have 200 book titles that I just fire it.
And now what I would say to you is how you use that. You buy them in a pack. Okay, you buy a pack of these and you use them. But there's a method to how to organize that protects you and allows you to leverage your assets. And that's where O3 IP comes in. But the reality is, get the account, feel secure, have it in there, and use that link. The one on our website they can use, go to justcallrandy.com. They can use either of those and set an account. They'll get a free credit to try it. And, you know, I always do a 30-minute complimentary, what we call it's just an overview meeting of it to make sure that, you know, if you're going to go to Instant IP, come talk to me for 30 minutes. It doesn't cost you anything. And I can say to you, you're going to be fine with 25 credits. You don't need 100. You know, I mean, those kinds of things, because I am an advisor for that group. So if that's a way to help, I hadn't even thought of that. But that would be a really good thing for entrepreneurs. Your why story, figure it out. Look up Deirdre Van Nest. She's amazing. She does something called Crazy Good Talks. And it's a marvelous program. It might be a little rich for some people's blood at the beginning, but there's a lot of material that she has out in the world. Look her up on LinkedIn. You know, go to websites like mine where you can see samples of things and get engaged and see examples and say, okay, I guess that's what real brand design does. You know, I mean, it's out there. But take some steps to act. You can't run your business. When I was little, I thought I'd run a paper store on the second floor in my room. And I had about 7 sheets of paper. And I put a little price tag on them and I played store. You know, there wasn't a lot of traffic walking by on the second floor of my house. I got to pretend and play everything. But unless you're going to play store or play house, you can't play business. You have to create one project, do something without getting paid for it. Learn to earn. And if you are really passionately driven to create your entrepreneurial future, that's not going to be scary. That's going to be delicious. That's going to be, ooh, here, give me that. You know, somebody said to me, are you ever going to retire? Why would I do that? First of all, I'd end up doing everything I'm doing and I wouldn't get paid for it. Mm-hmm. And I wouldn't be near people I could help. And I wouldn't be having nearly this much fun. So no, that R word is not mine.
You mentioned your website, justcallrandy.com, and that's Randy
us.
With an I.
Randy with an I, justcallrandy.com.
The female version, right? Yes. How else can they get a hold of you? How can they find you?
Once you go to that website, there are lots of ways. It just, to contact us, there's info@justcallrandy.com. You can email me directly at randy@justcallrandy.com. And we are very responsive. There's even a phone number on that website, because how can you have a company called Just Call Randy if you can't have a number to call? And you can reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm there. And I'm happy to help. I didn't have someone. I kind of figured it out. Right foot, left foot, right foot, left foot. And that was fine. It was also, Matt, a different time. You couldn't run a business at Starbucks with a phone. Today you can. The only other thing I would say to anyone who's on the fence about, do I stay in a job even if I'm not happy? Or do I start a business because I've always wanted to? Be sure about where you're going. And I say this because there are 2 ways to do it. You can start a business because you're leaving something you don't like, or you can start a business because you're gravitating toward that bigger future you're passionate about. Are you leaving or going toward? That's what writing your story down will tell you.
Yeah. Are you running from something or running towards something?
Yes,
yeah,
that is correct.
Absolutely.
And in your line of work, you work with people who always run toward the danger.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
So,
well, Randy,
I hope this helps.
I think this is absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much for all your wisdom and advice. I think this is really going to be great for a lot of people.
Well, if there's ever anything I can do, I'm always happy to do it. And, pay it forward, my friend.
Will do.
All right.
All right. Thank you, Randy.
Thank you. My pleasure. Take care.
Until next time.
Absolutely. Have a great day.
You too.
Bye.
Want more? Click below for extra resources in our podcast vault. We have show summaries, action plans, and information about coaching.